So we're scooted up a little. Oh, went too far. See, I'm just matching the frame of the latch to the catch plate. We'll get it kind of set where I want. It's a nice view of our washing machine over there. Alrighty, and snug down but not tight. Just enough to come in here and get it kind of leveled out with that latch. And it's not super critical, but you do want it pretty close, because what that does is dictates where that little stainless nub comes down and engages the latch. So let's say this is out here, it could come down and miss it, or if it's in too far, it could come down and hit that and create drag. And snug down, nuts on the inside, and now I'm actually going to check. Oh, and this is good. Here, switch sides with me. What's happening here is it's actually sticking. See, it's dragging in there. And what's happened is this latch slides up and down in the slotted holes there is actually too far up. And the bottom of this part right here is actually dragging on that part of the latch right there as it tries to close. See, it's really stiff, okay? So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put this in place, latch it down, and lower that latch. And this can be kind of a time-consuming, semi-frustrating part of it, because everything affects everything. So we're going to scoot that down, and that might change where this sits. We're just going to have to go back and forth to get it to latch so that everything's kind of centered up. It's not a hard process, just like with everything else. It just requires keeping your eyes open and kind of watching what's going on. So I'll work on this. So we have the window latches operating nicely. It fits in the opening really well. We haven't put any glass in it. You're going to do that last. So right now what we're going to switch to doing is working on the actuator. So just Phillips head screwdriver. We're going to take out the marker light and the tail light as well. Now, you could use a screwdriver, a bit driver, to take these out. But especially with the rear tail lights, do not use a bit driver, a powered bit driver, to put them back in, because you really need to make sure that you don't over tighten those screws. See, they're not very tight, because they'll crack these lenses. And if you notice on this truck, these are the beautiful factory ones. They're crystal clear. These are irreplaceable. So don't go cracking original lenses just because you need those. So we've got the screws loose here. Simply pull this through. And don't lose the screws, just push them back through the gasket. And do the same thing here. Kind of peel it off. Bring the gasket with it, because that holds the lens holder. With these ones, I'm going to go ahead and set the screws aside. These lights have not come off there in a long time. So you want to keep them sandwiched together. If you take the lens off, there's a handful of metal plates in there that kind of can be difficult to get back where they're going to go. So we're going to set this aside. And these are the two plugs. You can see that there's the one plug here that comes from the main wiring harness, and then the secondary plug that goes out to the marker. And take that apart. And take that apart. You notice I've got the marker light wedged against the body with my hip. Alright, we'll set both those aside, and right now we'll go ahead and take out the plastic retainers as well that the marker light screws into, and we'll put them right back on those screws. And what I do is I just set this aside and I actually store, oops, take the gasket off first, silly. Sorry, misleading everyone. We need this part. There. Okay, now we put the plastic things on there. That keeps the screws in place. And I actually just save these and store them right down inside the fender well, so that if you ever do want to make your truck road legal again, or if you're required to by law, you can just grab the part and stick it back in the hole by removing the actuator for the cables that we're going to put in the marker light hole. For right now, we'll just leave this set aside because we're going to use this as the main access point to do our installation right here. So this is the extent of our actuator setup here. They are marked L and R just with some paint marker because of the way that I put them together. Cables are wrapped together here a little bit just to keep them clean. The thing to note though is that the cables are actually going to stay attached to this plate. The only thing that you need to take off is this little, it's a 10 millimeter nut on the end. And I actually have this little, it's one of the 1/4 inch drive ones. You can just use a normal socket or even just an open wrench. I like the 1/4 inch drive one because it's small enough where I can get right in here where I'm going to need to reassemble it. So now that I've taken that off, the front part of this assembly will actually just come through. This and this latch plate with the springs and everything, you can leave it just like that. Nothing to do there. I have the nuts and washers stored on here. So go ahead and remove those. And if you look at this, there's a mark on the latch where it has a little lock. And what you're going to do is, well, at least what I like to do, you can do whatever you feel like. I like to put that towards the front because that gives you some consistency when you're unlocking the windows. On each side, if you put that little lock symbol towards the front, the cuts of your key, I don't have the right key for this, but it'd be a key like this. The cuts of the key will go forward, so you'll just know which way it is. Otherwise, you know, one side could be like this, the other side could be like that, and you'll be trying to stick the key in there in arbitrary ways. So that's all already assembled. No reason to have to take anything apart on there. We'll just come right down here and put it into the holes. So we take the factory gasket, and if you notice, the factory gasket actually has a cant to it. One end is thicker than the other. We'll put the thick end at the back so that this plate is actually fairly level. We'll put it on here and put it in the hole. So we've got the factory gasket on the new latch plate, the lock symbol pointing towards forward. And what I find with the stampings for these rear marker lights is the holes are very, very inconsistent. The plastic tabs that the factory uses can kind of drift around in there, and then the screw that goes through the marker light can also drift around. These can't drift around, so if you notice, this one's actually probably one of the worst that I've seen. It's, you know, a good 1/16 of an inch too tight to fit in there. So in those cases, sometimes it'll drop right in. In other cases, you'll have to just take a little round file and get that kind of scooted over so that these will slide into their spot nicely. You notice all I did was just take a little off the inside edges, not off the top and bottom. The plastic clips will still go right back in there. And if you want, you can put a little bit of paint on those so that there's no raw metal. Okay, we've got the actuator all set. Put a little bit of paint on those holes where I filed it. Now we're going to put the inside plate on. And if you notice, there's two cables that come off of it. One of them is longer than the other. So the short cable is going to go towards the back of the truck. I'm going to stuff it in here. We might as well cut the thing while I snake cables in. So we're going to get that plate set up there, and this plate set up there. And then just like they came assembled, I'm going to go ahead and put them on. Once it's on the studs, it tends to stay in place fairly well. At that point, we're going to take nut and washer, and this is where maybe a 5-year-old child would be helpful. Get a washer. I'll bet that's a really interesting video shot there. Okay, one's on. Unfortunately, that was the easy one. Now we'll do the other one. It's actually a shine a flashlight in there. You can see one's in place. We're going to do the other one up front there.